In a major development on the global stage, Russia and Ukraine have finally reached a comprehensive ceasefire agreement after 3 years of conflict, marking a significant turning point in one of the most prolonged and devastating military standoffs in recent history. This historic agreement, signed on May 1, 2025, in Istanbul and mediated by the United Nations, signals an immediate cessation of hostilities, the withdrawal of troops to pre-conflict positions, and the establishment of a demilitarized zone along contested borders. It also includes a full exchange of prisoners of war and civilian detainees and introduces a UN-led peacekeeping mission to monitor compliance on the ground. With both sides under growing domestic and international pressure to end the bloodshed, this ceasefire offers hope for renewed dialogue, though deep-rooted issues like border demarcation and security guarantees will still need to be addressed in upcoming negotiations. The global community has welcomed the agreement with cautious optimism, acknowledging that trust-building and sustained diplomatic momentum will be key to transforming this fragile truce into lasting peace. Moving on to the next major story, the European Union has taken a bold step forward in the fight against climate change by adopting a historic climate mitigation package under the Fit for 55 framework. Announced on April 29, this sweeping legislative package aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% from 1990 levels by the year 2030. Among the major reforms are tighter emission caps under the EU emissions trading system, national targets for the transport, buildings, and agriculture sectors, and a new carbon border adjustment mechanism to level the playing field for EU producers. There are also strengthened renewable energy and energy efficiency mandates, along with financial support mechanisms for households and workers impacted by the green transition. After years of negotiation among member states with diverse energy profiles, this agreement positions the EU as a global leader in climate action and is expected to drive both economic transformation and diplomatic shifts as countries adjust to new carbon regulations. And while the world works to decarbonize, there's a welcome sign of relief on the technology front as the global chip shortage, which has disrupted everything from smartphones to automobiles, is finally beginning to ease. Industry giants such as TSMC, Intel, and Samsung have significantly ramped up production. TSMC alone has increased output by over 30% compared to 2024, while Intel has brought online several new fabrication plants in the US and Europe, and Samsung has expanded operations in South Korea and India. This coordinated production surge, combined with slightly cooling demand in some sectors, is beginning to balance the supply chain again. While lingering geopolitical risks and climate-related disruptions remain on the horizon, analysts agree that this marks a turning point, especially for automakers and electronics firms who have faced mounting delays and cost pressures in recent years. Switching to global health news, the World Health Organization has declared a public health emergency of international concern due to the emergence of a new zoonotic virus. Announced on April 25, this alert represents the highest level of concern from the WHO and signals coordinated international action. The virus, which is believed to have jumped from wildlife to humans, has shown early signs of limited human-to-human transmission. Though current mortality rates remain low, the threat of mutation is real, prompting urgent calls for enhanced disease surveillance, information sharing, accelerated R&D on diagnostics and vaccines, and the adoption of the One Health approach which integrates human, animal, and environmental health. In the post-COVID world, the global community is acutely aware of how rapidly such threats can escalate, making swift, cooperative action essential to prevent another pandemic-scale crisis. Turning to the energy sector, OPEC Plus has decided to increase oil production by 2 million barrels per day beginning in June 2025. This decision, made in Vienna on April 24, is aimed at easing pressure from the ongoing global energy crisis that has seen fuel prices soar due to lingering effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and post-pandemic recovery. While the additional supply should help stabilize markets and provide relief to importing nations, particularly in Europe and Asia, analysts caution that it may not be enough to bring prices down substantially in the short term. The production hike also raises longer-term concerns about climate goals, as balancing oil market stability with decarbonization commitments remains a central challenge for OPEC Plus and its member nations. Shifting focus to biodiversity, parties to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity have officially adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework during a conference that concluded on May 5 in Kunming, China. This landmark agreement aims to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030 through a series of ambitious targets. These include protecting at least 30% of all land and marine areas, restoring 20% of degraded ecosystems, having the risks from pesticides, and mobilizing $200 billion annually in biodiversity financing. The framework also prioritizes the equitable sharing of genetic resource benefits and calls for robust implementation and monitoring mechanisms. Environmental groups have hailed this as a long overdue yet promising response to the rapid degradation of ecosystems globally, though much will depend on how effectively nations translate these goals into local action and policies. On the climate finance front, the World Bank has launched a groundbreaking $100 billion climate finance facility designed to support developing nations in transitioning to low-carbon, climate-resilient economies. Announced on April 20, the facility will provide concessional loans, grants, and risk mitigation instruments to drive investment in renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, forest conservation, disaster preparedness, and more. The aim is to catalyze both public and private sector efforts, supporting national climate action plans and helping developing countries leapfrog into green growth. As developing nations continue to call for greater support from wealthier economies, this facility is seen as a major step forward, though its impact will depend on transparency, accessibility, and effective resource allocation. Meanwhile, in a major milestone for global health, the World Health Organization has approved the world's first malaria vaccine, RTS, S/AS01, also known as Mosquirix, for widespread use. The decision, announced on April 18, is based on extensive clinical trials in African countries, where the vaccine demonstrated a 40% reduction in malaria risk among young children. While it's not a cure-all, this vaccine is expected to significantly reduce malaria-related deaths, especially in sub-Saharan Africa where the disease continues to take a heavy toll. The WHO is urging donor nations and partners to fund and support a large-scale rollout, emphasizing the need for equitable access, efficient supply chains, and ongoing investments in public health infrastructure. In another bold move by the international community, the United Nations Security Council has unanimously passed a resolution imposing sanctions on major global cybercrime syndicates. These groups, responsible for an uptick in cyberattacks against infrastructure, finance, and public systems, are now facing asset freezes, travel bans, and restrictions on financial transactions. The resolution, announced on April 16, targets the leadership and support networks behind these operations, some of which are believed to be connected to state actors. While enforcement will be challenging due to the transnational and decentralized nature of cybercrime, experts agree this is a strong first step in establishing international norms and deterrence in cyberspace. Member states will now need to enhance intelligence sharing and domestic cyber laws to ensure the sanctions have teeth. And to close out with more climate-related progress, the European Commission has introduced the EU's first-ever comprehensive climate change adaptation strategy. Released on April 12, the strategy outlines a bloc-wide plan to prepare for the increasingly inevitable impacts of climate change. From bolstering early warning systems to promoting nature-based solutions and reinforcing critical infrastructure, the strategy aims to build systemic resilience across member states. It mandates national adaptation plans within 18 months and seeks to strengthen research, investment, and data sharing. Though hailed as a vital complement to the EU's mitigation efforts, the strategy's success will hinge on sustained funding and political commitment across all levels of governance.